Good morning. Today's topic is gut and Fabry disease, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to discuss this topic. I have to recognize some conflict of interest since I have collaborated with pharma companies which have an interest in Fabry and other diseases. Okay, so this is the question to start the talk. Are we alone in the universe? Science says it's a definite maybe, but more often we may feel alone at home. And one of the loneliest moments is when you realize that the roll of toilet paper has only one leaf and you are alone. But maybe you are not as alone as you may think. In this regard, I have some bad news and some good news. First, the bad news, which is we are all holobionts. And no, holobionts are not some kind of space monsters. And this brings us the good news. This is not so bad after all, being a holobiont. In fact, it may even be good. We have to deal with it appropriately so as it is good for us. And indeed, holobionts are entities composed of a host, that may be us, or an animal, or a tree, and all of its symbiotic microbes. So these are the microbes that live around on our skin or within us. And we, together with our microbes, we are a holobiont. And where are these microbes located? Well, in outside us, inside us, in the mouth, in the nose, but most of them, they are in the gut, and they are present in a stool. And these are millions, these are in fact trillions of bacteria that we live with. And just to get an idea of the impact of microbes on the holobiont, well, these are koalas, and we know that koalas, they eat eucalyptus. However, eucalyptus leaves, which is the food of the koalas, are poisonous to most animals, including humans. So we cannot safely ingest eucalyptus. Fortunately, koalas are holobionts, and this is why they can eat what they eat. And this brings us to the next question. What is the first solid food of a koala joy? Well, this is the vital cycle of the koala. They are born and they live inside their moms, drinking milk for 6 months, and then they eat pap for 1 week. This is the first solid food, pap. And after eating pap, they are able to eat eucalyptus leaves for life. So the first solid food of the koala is their mother's poo, which is called pap. And thus they acquire the microbiota, the bacteria that lives in their guts and removes the toxins from eucalyptus leaves and allows koala to eat eucalyptus. So they can eat this toxic food because they have some bacteria in their guts that remove the toxins. And now there's a huge issue with koalas because they are dying from chlamydia. This is a bacteria. And when scientists try to treat the koalas with antibiotics, so something to treat bacteria, this may destroy the delicate gut flora of the koalas. So the microbiota, the bacteria in the gut. These bacteria that are needed, represented here, to detoxify eucalyptus leaves. And once koalas take antibiotics, they lose their bacteria. Eucalyptus leaves become toxic for them, as for us. Okay, but you may say, I'm not a koala. So what about me? I'm not a koala. But we humans, we are also halobionts. So this is how it works. Your microbiota and you. This is you or me or a standard human, around 70 kilos of weight. So the good news is that when you think you are overweight, so it's not all about you. The real you is about 68.5 kilos. And 1.5 kilos of us is the gut microbiota. But if instead of talking about weight, we talk about number of cells, then the relative numbers are different. Out of 110 cells within us, 10 cells will be human cells, will be skin cells, kidney cells. But the rest 100 will be bacteria and viruses and fungi, mainly in the gut. So, if you were a democracy, if I were a democracy, the president would be a Clostridium, a bacteria. He would get more votes than me being human from my human cells. Okay, and this has consequences. For example, when we eat, we are not just eating for us, we are also eating for the microbiota. So we are eating for 2 trillion bacteria that we have on us. So you feed yourself and you feed the real you, your human cells, but also you feed your microbiota. And then once we metabolize, once we process the food, there will be some remnants there, that some toxins that we excrete in the poo and the pee. Well, this works exactly the same for the microbiota. Once they eat, they will produce some poo and pee. And you may say, well, now I finally understand these famous Olympic Games where there were like 2 toilets within the same room. One for me, one for the microbiota. Well, it does not work that way because our microbiota is within our guts. So the microbiota poo and pee will be absorbed by the gut, and we will be in charge of excreting any toxins produced by the microbiota through our kidneys in the urine into the toilet. Okay, so not all these products of the microbiota are bad for us. We may even like some of them. For example, our bacteria in our gut produce vitamin K that we need for the blood to coagulate and not bleed to death whenever we have some minor skin injury. But we should be careful what we feed our microbiota, because poo and pee will always be poo and pee. So it's better that we think about feeding our microbiota whatever makes them happy and they don't produce any toxins. We better make sure that the poo and pee produced by our microbiota is as nicest as possible. In this regard, not all bacteria were created equal. There are good bacteria and bad bacteria. And we know that because of experimental work in which when good bacteria are the main bacteria in our gut, this results in health benefits. And these good bacteria, they are mainly vegetarians. And they are good for us. And then some bacteria are carnivorous. They eat mainly meat, proteins, and these are, on the whole, bad for us. And vegetarian bacteria, the good bacteria, they like mainly fiber. And you see this paper, Farting Fiber, the story of inulin. So when bacteria eat fiber, they produce gas. They produce short-chain fatty acids that are good for us, but they create gas that, well, we excrete while farting. Okay, so this is good poo and pee. Molecules derived from fiber that will produce gas that will be odorous, like butyrate and short-chain fatty acids. However, carnivorous bacteria will produce bad poo and pee. They will produce toxins or toxins precursors. Okay, so this is a summary of how it works. Here are diverse molecules that we take with food. For example, these two are amino acids present in proteins, and this is cellulose. So this is insoluble fiber. So we eat this, and it will arrive to our gut, where bacteria will eat these very same molecules that we have previously ingested. And from amino acids, you mainly get toxin precursors. When bacteria eat amino acids, they generate toxin precursors. However, when they eat fiber, they generate short-chain fatty acids that are smelly, that may yield gas, and one of them is butyrate that will come back to it. And butyrate is anti-inflammatory and promotes a healthy gut and healthy organs. For example, you know that dark chocolate may have some health benefits. So it's not chocolate itself that has the health benefits, it's chocolate eaten and processed by bacteria that generates beneficial molecules. Okay, so if we have some bad bacteria and good bacteria, the question may come, can we manipulate the gut microbiota? And indeed we can. And the first way we can try to manipulate the microbiota is to feed them whatever they like, whatever the good microbiota likes. We have 2 trillion mouths to feed. So these are the prebiotics. Prebiotics. It's typically non-digestible fiber that pass undigested through the upper part of the gastrointestinal tract, and they are used as food by the microbiota. And when microbiota eats this, they generate these healthy molecules like short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. And then the other way to manipulate the microbiota is immigration. So these are the probiotics. And probiotics are microorganisms that are believed to provide health benefits when consumed. And these include, for example, yogurt, kefir, and other fermented products. However, if we eat microorganisms, they will survive in our gut only if they have their own food. So if we think about them when eating. So the next time you go to the supermarket, maybe you will find yourself not only thinking what would I like for dinner, but also what would my microbiota like for dinner. And that's mainly vegetables, fiber. So as tonight's microbiota is nice. It's composed of healthy molecules that promote my health, like such as butyrate. And you know, there is a new kind of transplant, and this is this taken from the web page of the Mayo Clinic for medical professionals. Quick, inexpensive, and 90% cure rate. A new transplant modality, FMT. And what's FMT? Fecal microbiota transplant. And in some, there are some, so this is already done in the clinic, and there are some very well established indications. For example, some people, when they take antibiotics, most of the gut microbiota may be wiped away, and specific bacteria grow that are bad for us, like Clostridium difficile, and these bacteria are resistant to antibiotics. It's quite difficult to get rid of them. So sometimes we have to go for fecal microbiota transplant, just to replace the normal microbiota. So that's a stool transplant, a poop transplant. And maybe in the future, some modality of fecal microbiota transplant may be applied to treat kidney disease or even Fabry disease. And this is not yet in the clinic, but there is a lot of research going on. And for example, there are these striking observations. Weight gain after fecal microbiota transplantation. Woman's stool transplant leads to tremendous weight gain. So this is a woman with Clostridium difficile gets a stool transplant from her daughter, and her daughter was overweight. And the daughter was overweight not because she was eating too much, that may be, but because she has specific bacteria in the gut that promoted weight gain, and she transferred this bacteria to her mother. Or more recently, 2 days ago, fecal transplants reverse hallmarks of aging. And this is based on a scientific paper published a few days ago. So this is experimental, this is mice, but what they did is they took gut bacteria from young mice and they transplanted this to elderly mice. So this gut bacteria from young mice reversed aging in elderly mice, and the reverse was also true. Bacteria from the gut of elderly mice accelerated aging in young mice. So this is experimental, but this is currently where research is going, and in the near future we may see it applied to treat human disease. So you may tell me, well, Professor T, please remember that we are at the Fabry International Network meeting. So what about Fabry disease? Well, in Fabry disease, sometimes you have kidney disease, and we should remember that some of the foods that we take may be processed by the gut microbiota. And for example, this L-Carnitine. You can buy all kinds of L-Carnitine in the internet. And L-Carnitine is also contained in foods. For example, beef has around 100 milligrams of L-Carnitine per 100 grams of beef. And other foods contain L-Carnitine. And you can take pills of L-Carnitine that are the equivalent, a single pill is the equivalent of 1.5 kilos of beef in terms of carnitine content. And some pills are the equivalent of 5 kilos of beef in terms of carnitine content. And what's carnitine? Well, carnitine is this interesting molecule that feeds the mitochondria so as they can produce energy. So carnitine is a very important molecule for muscle health. However, we have this problem. If you take a lot of carnitine as beef or as carnitine supplements, this is processed by gut microbiota. So the more carnitine you take, the more gut microbiota that eats away at carnitine you develop. And the poo produced by gut microbiota when eating carnitine is called TMA, and TMA is a toxin precursor. So when you eat too much L-carnitine, you will have a lot of bacteria that process L-carnitine, and you will not be absorbing into the circulation L-carnitine, you will be absorbing into the circulation TMA. And TMA will go into the liver, where it will be transformed to something called TMAO. And TMAO should be excreted by the kidneys. But if you take lots of L-carnitine, lots of red meat, or your kidneys are not working well, then you will accumulate TMAO, and this will cause damage to the cardiovascular system and the kidneys. So this is an application of what we just learned about taking care of our microbiota. But then there is the gastrointestinal symptoms in Fabry disease that you are very well aware of. From diarrhea to constipation to bloating to abdominal pain, it may be very variable. And the thing is that there is some evidence that this may also be related to the microbiota. In this regard, we all know that in Fabry disease, we get accumulation of this molecule GB3, which has two fatty acids. Well, when GB3 accumulates in the lysosome tries to get rid of it. So it takes away one of the fatty acids, it starts to process GB3, but then it gets stuck. It gets stuck at a molecule called lyso-GB3. And lyso-GB3, I understand it as a failed escape attempt. So the lysosome is full of GB3, tries to get rid of it, and then it gets stuck with lyso-GB3, like this prisoner trying to escape from the prison. Failed escape attempt. You end up in a worse situation that we started with. And this is the case with lyso-GB3. And lyso-GB3 is thought to be excreted in bile. So when in Fabry disease lyso-GB3 accumulates, this will be excreted in bile into the gut. So in the lab, we try to understand whether this lyso-GB3 in the gut would impact on the microbiota. So we did a series of experiments in test tubes in the labs, and we observed that excess lyso-GB3 in the gut will change the behavior of the gut microbiota. It will increase the presence of this bacteria here, Bacteroides fragilis, and will lead to a loss of butyrate production. Butyrate, remember, this is metabolite. This is the result of the processing of fiber by the gut microbiota that has anti-inflammatory and tissue protective effects. So from these test tube experiments that we perform, we hypothesize, we think that the loss of butyrate may contribute to the gastrointestinal symptoms and perhaps to other target organ injury, and we're trying to understand whether this is the case and how can we take this knowledge to improve the outcomes of Fabry disease. Okay, and in this regard, there was this recent work from Germany in which they administer oral alpha-galactosidase A. So this is a supplement that is available in Germany, as I understand, which is derived from a fungi, and you can actually take it in pills. And they looked at the impact of taking oral alpha-galactosidase A on abdominal pain, that decreased, on diarrhea, that decreased, and on flatulence, that did not change much. So some of the gastrointestinal symptoms in Fabry disease appear in this preliminary work to be responsive to oral alpha-galactosidase A. And you show that flatulence did not improve, but you also have these papers. Also, this is in the news, but based on science. Plant-based diet makes men fart more, a sign of healthy diet, of good bacteria. And this is based on science. And is, as I told you, when bacteria process fiber, they will generate some gas. And this means that you have good bacteria, vegetarian bacteria. Okay, so this is the take-home message. We are all holobionts, and this is key to our health, as it is key to the health of koalas. We should remember that we are eating for 2 trillion, not just for us. So it's important that we provide appropriate food, that means fiber and vegetables, to our bacteria. The microbiota may interact with Fabry and kidney disease. We just not know enough yet to use this in routine clinical care, but we are getting there. In the meantime, the good news is that a healthy diet for us, full of vegetables and fiber, is also a healthy diet for our microbiota. And this is the case because we have living together with these bacteria for millions of years, and we have come to have the same tastes. Thank you very much for your attention.